The phone was ringing at 3 a.m. and Sarah knew something was terribly wrong because nobody calls at that hour unless someone is dead or dying, but when she picked up the call what she heard made her wish someone had actually died instead, because the voice on the other end belonged to her best friend Emma, and she was sobbing so hard that Sarah could barely make out the words, but what she did hear made her blood run cold. "Sarah, I'm so sorry, I had to do it. They were going to kill my little brother if I didn't give them what they wanted, and they said they needed someone young and pretty, and I thought of you, and I'm so sorry." Sarah sat up in bed, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest, because Emma was making no sense at all, but the fear in her voice was real, and whatever she had done was bad, really bad, and Sarah knew that her life was about to change forever. "Emma, what are you talking about? Who wanted what, and why are you calling me at 3 in the morning?" But the line went dead and Sarah was left sitting in the dark holding a phone that felt heavier than a brick in her hands, and she knew that whatever Emma had done, it involved her, and it was going to destroy everything they had built together over the past 15 years. Sarah and Emma had been best friends since they were 7 years old when Emma's family moved next door, and Sarah remembered that first day when Emma had knocked on their door with a shy smile asking if Sarah wanted to play, and from that moment they were inseparable, like two halves of the same soul. They did everything together, shared their lunch money when one of them forgot theirs at home, studied together for every test and exam, dreamed together about the future they would build, and when Sarah's father lost his job when she was 16, Emma's family had helped them with groceries and rent without ever making them feel like charity cases. Emma knew every secret Sarah had ever had, like the time Sarah had a crush on their math teacher Mr. Johnson, or when Sarah shoplifted a candy bar when she was 12 and felt so guilty she couldn't sleep for a week, and Sarah knew Emma's secrets too, like how Emma's parents fought every night behind closed doors, and how Emma sometimes cut herself on her thighs where nobody could see the scars. They promised each other they would never let money or boys or anything else come between them, because their friendship was sacred and more valuable than gold or diamonds or anything else in this world, and Sarah believed that promise with every fiber of her being. When they graduated from high school, they both got into the same community college, and Sarah studied business while Emma studied nursing, and they shared a tiny apartment that was barely bigger than a closet, but it was theirs, and they were happy even when they had to choose between buying food or paying the electricity bill. Sarah worked 3 part-time jobs, cleaning offices in the morning, delivering newspapers in the afternoon, and waitressing at night, while Emma worked at the local hospital as a nursing assistant, and together they scraped by month after month, dreaming of better days ahead when they would have real careers and real money. But dreams don't pay rent, and by their junior year they were both exhausted and broke, and Sarah was starting to wonder if they would ever make it out of the cycle of poverty that seemed to trap everyone in their neighborhood like quicksand. That's when Emma started talking about easy money and quick fixes, and Sarah should have seen the warning signs, but she was too tired and too stressed to pay attention to the subtle changes in her best friend's behavior. 3 weeks before that terrifying phone call, Emma had started acting strange in ways that Sarah couldn't quite put her finger on, but she knew something was different, because Emma, who used to tell Sarah everything, suddenly became secretive and evasive whenever Sarah asked about her day. Emma started coming home with new clothes, expensive makeup, and electronics that she definitely couldn't afford on her nursing assistant salary, and when Sarah asked where she got the money, Emma would just shrug and say she picked up extra shifts or found things on sale. But Sarah knew Emma was lying, because she had known Emma for 15 years, and she could tell when Emma was being dishonest by the way she wouldn't make eye contact, and the way she fidgeted with her hands, and the way her voice got slightly higher when she was making up stories. One evening Sarah came home from her waitressing job to find Emma sitting at their tiny kitchen table with 2 men in expensive suits who looked completely out of place in their run-down apartment, and Emma introduced them as business associates, but she wouldn't explain what kind of business they were discussing. The men were polite, but there was something cold and calculating in their eyes that made Sarah's skin crawl, and she noticed how they looked at her like she was a piece of meat hanging in a butcher shop window, and she excused herself to her bedroom, but she could hear them talking in low voices for another hour. After the men left, Sarah confronted Emma about who they were and what they wanted, but Emma became defensive and angry in a way that was completely unlike her usual calm demeanor, and she told Sarah to mind her own business and stop asking questions that didn't concern her. "Emma, we've been best friends since we were kids. You can tell me anything. What's going on, and who were those men?" "Sarah, just drop it, okay? Some things are better left alone, and I'm handling it, so you don't need to worry about anything." But Sarah was worried, because Emma was clearly in over her head with people who looked like they could make problems disappear permanently, and Sarah knew that whatever Emma had gotten herself into, it was dangerous and probably illegal. The next few weeks Emma became even more secretive and started staying out late without telling Sarah where she was going, and she would receive phone calls at odd hours that made her nervous and jumpy, and sometimes Sarah would catch her counting large amounts of cash that she would quickly hide when Sarah walked into the room. Sarah tried to talk to Emma several times about what was happening, but Emma would change the subject or leave the apartment, and Sarah began to feel like she was losing her best friend to whatever dark world Emma had entered. If you're wondering what those men wanted and how Emma got involved with them, make sure to subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn that will leave you speechless. One night Sarah pretended to be asleep when Emma came home, and she heard Emma on the phone with someone speaking in whispers, but Sarah caught enough words to understand that Emma owed someone a lot of money and that person was getting impatient about being repaid. I know I'm working on it, but I need more time. Please just give me 2 more weeks, and I'll have everything you want, I promise. Sarah's heart sank because she realized that Emma had borrowed money from dangerous people and now she couldn't pay it back, and Sarah knew that people like that don't accept excuses or payment plans. They expect results, or they take what they want by force. The next morning Sarah tried one more time to reach out to Emma over breakfast, and she offered to help in whatever way she could, even though they both knew Sarah didn't have any money to spare. Emma, please talk to me. Whatever trouble you're in, we can figure it out together like we always do. I don't care how bad it is, we're family and family sticks together. Emma looked at Sarah with tears in her eyes, and for a moment Sarah thought she was going to confess everything, but then Emma's phone rang, and when she answered it her face went white as a sheet, and Sarah knew that whatever was happening was about to get much worse. Yes, I understand. Tomorrow night I'll have what you need. Don't worry, everything is arranged. When Emma hung up the phone, she wouldn't look at Sarah, and she mumbled something about having to work a double shift, and she left the apartment without eating her breakfast or saying goodbye, and that was the last time Sarah saw her best friend before everything went to hell. The day Emma betrayed 15 years of friendship for $5,000 started like any other Tuesday, with Sarah rushing to get ready for her morning cleaning job because her alarm clock had failed to go off and she was already running 20 minutes late. Emma was still asleep when Sarah left the apartment, or at least Sarah thought Emma was asleep, but later she would realize that Emma was probably lying awake staring at the ceiling, knowing what she was about to do and feeling sick about it, but not sick enough to change her mind. Sarah spent the morning cleaning offices in the downtown business district, scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans, and thinking about how much she hated her life, but also feeling grateful that she had Emma to share the struggle with, because at least she wasn't facing poverty and uncertainty alone. She had no idea that while she was mopping floors, Emma was meeting with the same men in expensive suits who had visited their apartment weeks earlier, and they were finalizing the details of a plan that would destroy Sarah's life and change everything forever. The meeting took place at a coffee shop across town, where Emma sat nervously stirring her latte while the older of the two men explained exactly what they expected from her and what would happen if she failed to deliver what she had promised. Miss Emma, you understand the terms of our agreement. You owe us $15,000 and you have been unable to make payments for the past 2 months, so we need alternative compensation. I understand, but I want you to know that she's a good person. She's never hurt anyone, and she doesn't deserve what you're planning to do to her. Miss Emma, your friend's character is not our concern. Our only concern is recovering what you owe us plus interest, and she represents $5,000 toward your debt, which leaves you with $10,000 still outstanding. Emma's hands were shaking as she signed the papers they put in front of her, and she tried to tell herself that Sarah would be fine, that these men were probably just human traffickers who would put Sarah to work in some factory or restaurant, and that Sarah was strong enough to survive whatever they had planned. But deep down Emma knew that she was selling her best friend into a nightmare that Sarah might never escape from, and the guilt was eating her alive. But her little brother's life hung in the balance, and she had to choose between Sarah's safety and her brother's survival. Guys, I need you to pause for a second and think about this situation, because I want to know what you would do if someone threatened your family member. Would you sacrifice your best friend to save them? Let me know in the comments what you think. The plan was simple and cruel in its efficiency. Sarah would receive a fake job offer for a high-paying position at a marketing company in another state, and when she showed up for the interview she would be taken instead of hired, and Emma would collect $5,000 for her role in the deception. Emma knew Sarah's weaknesses better than anyone else, and she knew exactly how to manipulate her best friend into walking into the trap, because Sarah was desperate for a better job and she trusted Emma completely, and she would never suspect that Emma could betray her so thoroughly. That afternoon Emma came home with a big smile on her face and a story about meeting a recruiter at the hospital who was looking for someone with Sarah's business degree and customer service experience for a marketing position that paid 3 times what Sarah was currently making. "Sarah, this is it, this is our big break. I told him all about you and he wants to meet you tomorrow evening for an interview, and if you get the job you can finally quit all those part-time jobs and focus on finishing school." Sarah was skeptical at first because opportunities like this didn't just fall from the sky, especially not for people like them who had no connections or family money, but Emma was so excited and convincing that Sarah began to believe that maybe their luck was finally changing. "Emma, are you sure this is legitimate? Because it sounds too good to be true, and you know what they say about things that sound too good to be true." "Sarah, I met the guy myself. He's completely professional. He works for a real company, and he specifically asked for someone with your background. This is real and it's happening, and you can't let fear hold you back from the life you deserve." Emma showed Sarah the business card the recruiter had given her and the company website on her phone, and everything looked professional and legitimate, and Sarah began to feel hope for the first time in months that maybe she could escape the cycle of poverty and build a real future. The interview was scheduled for 7 o'clock the next evening at a restaurant downtown, and Emma offered to drive Sarah there because she wanted to be supportive, and Sarah was touched by her friend's enthusiasm and she began to get excited about the possibility of finally catching a break. Subscribe if you want to see how this trap unfolds, because what happens next will make your blood boil with anger at Emma's betrayal. That night Sarah spent hours preparing for the interview, researching the company, practicing her answers to common interview questions, and picking out the best outfit from her limited wardrobe, and Emma helped her prepare while fighting back tears of guilt and shame. Sarah went to bed early so she would be well rested for the interview, and Emma lay awake all night staring at the ceiling, knowing that she was about to destroy the most important relationship in her life, but telling herself that she had no choice because her brother would die if she didn't go through with the plan. The next evening Emma drove Sarah to the restaurant, and Sarah was nervous but excited about the opportunity to finally improve her situation, and she thanked Emma repeatedly for connecting her with the recruiter, and Emma had to bite her tongue to keep from crying. "Emma, I don't know what I would do without you. You're always looking out for me and trying to help me succeed, and I promise when I get this job I'll pay you back for everything you've done for me." Those words cut through Emma's heart like a knife, because she knew that in a few minutes Sarah would be gone and Emma would never see her best friend again, and the $5,000 she would receive felt like blood money burning a hole in her pocket. Sarah walked into the restaurant at exactly 7 o'clock wearing her best dress and carrying a folder with copies of her resume and references, and she felt confident and hopeful for the first time in months, because this job could change everything for both her and Emma. She told the hostess she was there to meet Mr. Johnson for a business dinner, and the hostess led her to a table in the back corner where 2 men in expensive suits were waiting, and Sarah recognized them as the same men who had visited her apartment weeks earlier. Her heart started racing because she realized something was very wrong, but before she could turn around and leave, one of the men stood up and blocked her path while the other man smiled coldly and gestured for her to sit down. "Miss Sarah, please have a seat. We have some business to discuss with you regarding your friend Emma and a debt that needs to be resolved." "I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't owe anyone any money. I think there's been some kind of mistake." "Oh, there's no mistake, Miss Sarah. Your friend Emma owes us $15,000, and she has offered you as partial payment toward that debt, so we need you to come with us quietly and cooperatively." Sarah looked around the restaurant frantically, hoping to see Emma coming to explain that this was all some terrible misunderstanding, but Emma was nowhere to be seen, and Sarah realized that her best friend had set her up and sold her to these dangerous men for money. The reality hit her like a physical blow to the stomach, and she felt sick and dizzy and betrayed in ways she had never imagined possible, because Emma was supposed to be the one person in the world who would never hurt her. "You're lying. Emma would never do this to me. We're best friends. She loves me like a sister. She would die before she would betray me like this." The older man pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a recording of Emma agreeing to the arrangement, and Sarah heard her best friend's voice clearly stating that she understood the terms and that Sarah would be at the restaurant at 7 o'clock. Sarah's world collapsed in that moment, because the voice on the recording was unmistakably Emma's, and there was no denying that her best friend had sold her to these men for $5,000 like she was nothing more than a piece of property. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, then you know how Sarah felt in that moment, so hit that like button if this story is making you feel emotions. The men explained that Sarah now belonged to them and that she would be taken to a location where she would work to pay off Emma's debt plus interest, and they made it clear that resistance would only make things worse for everyone involved. Sarah tried to run, but the restaurant was crowded and the men were positioned to block her escape routes, and she realized that Emma had chosen this location specifically because it would be difficult for Sarah to cause a scene or get help from other customers. "Please let me go. I'll find a way to pay Emma's debt myself. I'll get a loan or sell everything I own, but please don't do this. I'm not the one who owes you money. Miss Sarah, debt is debt and your friend has made her choice and signed the papers, so now you belong to us and you will work until the debt is paid in full, which should take approximately 2 years if you cooperate." 2 years of her life sold for $5,000 by the person she trusted most in the world, and Sarah couldn't understand how Emma could have done this to her after everything they had been through together. The men stood up and one of them put his hand on Sarah's shoulder in a grip that looked friendly to other customers but felt like a vice, and Sarah knew that she was trapped and that no one in the restaurant would help her because it looked like a normal business meeting. They walked her out of the restaurant and toward a black car parked at the curb, and Sarah kept hoping that Emma would appear and stop this madness, but Emma was long gone and Sarah was completely alone and terrified. As they reached the car, Sarah saw Emma standing across the street watching from the shadows, and their eyes met for one brief moment, and Sarah saw the guilt and shame in Emma's face but also saw that Emma was not going to save her. Emma mouthed the words "I'm sorry" and then turned and walked away, leaving Sarah to face the consequences of Emma's choices, and Sarah screamed Emma's name but Emma didn't look back. Sarah was pushed into the back seat of the black car between two men who smelled like cigarettes and expensive cologne, and as the car pulled away from the restaurant she caught one last glimpse of Emma walking away and she felt her heart breaking into a million pieces. The drive took 2 hours through dark country roads, and Sarah spent the entire time trying to make sense of what had happened and wondering how Emma could have betrayed 15 years of friendship for money, because the Emma she knew would never have done something so cruel and heartless. They arrived at a large house in the middle of nowhere surrounded by tall fences and security cameras, and Sarah was escorted inside by the two men who warned her not to try anything stupid because there was nowhere to run and no one to help her. Inside the house, Sarah was shocked to discover that she was not alone, because there were 12 other young women who had been brought there under similar circumstances, and they all had the same hollow look in their eyes that spoke of dreams destroyed and trust shatter. The women ranged in age from 18 to 25, and they came from different backgrounds, but they all shared the common experience of being betrayed by someone they loved and trusted and sold into what was essentially modern-day slavery. Sarah was given a small room with a single bed and told that she would be working in the house's various businesses until Emma's debt was paid off, and that any attempt to escape would result in severe punishment not just for her but for the other women as well. For 3 months Sarah worked 18-hour days, cooking, cleaning and doing whatever tasks were assigned to her while plotting her escape and trying to figure out how to contact the outside world, because the house had no phones and no internet access. The other women told her stories of friends and family members who had betrayed them for money or drugs or to pay off their own debts, and Sarah began to understand that Emma's betrayal was not unique but part of a larger pattern of exploitation that preyed on desperation and broken relationship. But Sarah was different from the other women because she had grown up poor and she knew how to survive in difficult situations, and she spent her time observing the guards' routines and looking for weaknesses in the security system. 3 months into her captivity, Sarah discovered something that changed everything she thought she knew about Emma's betrayal, because she overheard 2 guards talking about a previous case where a woman had arranged to have herself sold in order to save someone else. Hit that subscribe button because this twist is going to blow your mind. The guards were discussing how smart the woman had been to sacrifice herself to protect her younger brother who had been targeted by the same organization, and Sarah suddenly realized that Emma might not have betrayed her at all but instead might have sacrificed herself in Sarah's place. Sarah remembered Emma mentioning that the men had threatened her little brother, and she began to piece together a different version of events where Emma had volunteered to take Sarah's place but the men had insisted on taking Sarah instead because she fit their requirements better. That night Sarah questioned one of the other women who had been there the longest and learned that sometimes the organization would accept a substitute if the original target was unavailable, but they preferred to take the person they had originally chosen. Sarah realized that Emma had probably tried to save her by offering to take her place, but the men had rejected Emma's offer and demanded Sarah specifically because she was younger and prettier and more valuable to their operation. The next day Sarah managed to steal a phone from one of the guards and she called Emma's number, but it went straight to voicemail, and Sarah left a message telling Emma that she understood what had really happened and that she forgave her. 2 weeks later Sarah executed her escape plan during a shift change when security was at its weakest, and she managed to get out of the house and make it to a road where she flagged down a passing truck driver who helped her contact the police. The police raided the house and arrested everyone involved in the operation and freed all of the women who were being held there, and Sarah learned that Emma had been trying to raise money to pay for Sarah's release but had been murdered by the organization when she threatened to go to the police. Sarah found Emma's body in a shallow grave behind an abandoned warehouse, and she realized that her best friend had died trying to save her and that Emma's betrayal had actually been an act of desperate love disguised as greed and selfishness. Comment below and let me know if you think Emma was a hero or a villain, because the truth is more complicated than it first appeared. In Emma's apartment Sarah found a letter that Emma had written but never sent, explaining everything that had happened and why she had made the choices she made, and the letter revealed the full truth about Emma's impossible situation. Emma's little brother had gotten involved with the wrong people and owed them money for drugs, and when he couldn't pay they threatened to kill him unless Emma found a way to settle his debt, and they had given her a choice between paying $15,000 or providing them with a young woman who fit their specifications. Emma had tried everything to raise the money, including selling everything she owned and taking out loans, but she could only come up with $10,000, and time was running out and her brother's life hung in the balance. In desperation Emma had gone to the men and begged them to take her instead of Sarah, but they had refused because Emma didn't meet their requirements, and they told her that if she didn't deliver Sarah by the agreed-upon date her brother would die slowly and painfully. Emma had spent weeks trying to find another solution, but there was no way out, and she finally realized that she had to choose between Sarah's freedom and her brother's life, and she chose to save her brother even though it meant destroying the most important relationship in her life. The letter ended with Emma expressing her love for Sarah and her hope that someday Sarah would understand why she had made such an impossible choice, and Emma promised that she would spend the rest of her life trying to make things right. Sarah cried for hours after reading the letter because she realized that Emma had been trapped in an impossible situation with no good choices, and that Emma had probably died hating herself for what she had been forced to do. Like this video if you believe that sometimes love forces us to make choices that look like betrayal but are actually acts of sacrifice. The final twist came when Sarah learned that Emma's brother had been killed anyway just hours after Sarah was taken, because the men never intended to honor their agreement with Emma, and they had always planned to eliminate anyone who knew too much about their operation. Emma had sacrificed her best friend and ultimately her own life for nothing because the men had never intended to keep their word, and Sarah realized that Emma had died knowing that her sacrifice had been meaningless, and that made the tragedy even more heartbreaking. Sarah used the $5,000 that had been recovered from the criminal organization to establish a foundation in Emma's memory to help other young women who were at risk of being trafficked, and she dedicated her life to making sure that Emma's death would not be in vain. Years later Sarah still missed Emma every single day, and she kept Emma's picture on her desk as a reminder that love sometimes requires impossible sacrifices, and that friendship can survive even the most devastating betrayals. If this story touched your heart, then please share it with someone who needs to hear about the complexity of human relationships and the power of forgiveness, because sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who love us the deepest and are just trying to save us in the only way they know how.